The emergency alarm echoed through the Galactic Union Council chamber. Yuna sat perfectly still in her seat, while the other ambassadors rushed to their communication screens. She watched them with calm eyes as their faces turned pale with fear. The message was simple and terrifying. The Chromath swarm had attacked 3 more worlds. 15 billion people were dead. The Velian Confederation was begging for help. The chamber fell silent when the Velian ambassador played the distress call. Yuna could hear children crying in the background. She could hear explosions and screams. The message ended with a simple plea that made her chest tighten. "Please, someone help us." One by one, the council members spoke. The Therian ambassador said his people could not fight such a dangerous enemy. The Plexian representative explained that sending military forces would take too long. The Korthan elder simply shook his head and looked at the floor. Every species had a different excuse, but the answer was always the same. No one would help. Yuna had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years. She had learned to stay quiet during these meetings. Humans were new to the Galactic Union. Most species were still afraid of them. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, the most dangerous rating in the entire database. Other species needed special suits just to visit Earth because the gravity was too strong. They could not breathe the air properly. The diseases would kill them in days. Even Earth's animals were considered terrifying monsters by galactic standards. But right now, none of that mattered. Yuna stood up slowly. Every head in the chamber turned to look at her. She was shorter than most of the other ambassadors, but somehow she seemed to fill the room with her presence. "Humanity will answer your call," Yuna said in a clear voice. The chamber exploded with noise. The Therian ambassador jumped to his feet and said she was insane. The Plexian representative warned that humans would die by the thousands. Others simply stared at her with wide eyes, unable to believe what they had just heard. Yuna remained calm. She had expected this reaction. She tapped her communication device and connected directly to Earth's military command. Her face appeared on every screen in the chamber as she made the transmission. Within seconds, Fleet Admiral Day's face appeared on the screen. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Ambassador Yuna," he said with a slight nod. "I've been monitoring the council session. I assume you're requesting military deployment." "Yes, Admiral," Yuna replied. "The Velian Confederation needs immediate assistance against the Chromath swarm. Galactic Union forces have declined to respond." Admiral Day was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then he nodded once. "Understood. I'm authorizing deployment of the 1st Expeditionary Armada. 73 warships, 25,000 Marines, and full support personnel. We'll be ready to jump in. 6 hours." The other ambassadors gasped. 6 hours? It took most species 6 months to mobilize their military forces. The Therian ambassador protested loudly, saying it was impossible. But Yuna knew better. Humans had been preparing for war since they first learned to make fire. It was in their blood. Admiral Day continued speaking. "Ambassador, please transmit all available data on the Chromath swarm and the Velian star systems. My tactical teams will begin planning the operation immediately." He paused, and his expression softened slightly. "Tell the Velians that help is coming. Earth does not abandon those who call for aid." The transmission ended. Yuna turned to face the council. The Velian ambassador was crying openly now, but this time they were tears of hope instead of despair. The other species looked shocked and confused. They had never seen anything like this before. "How can your species mobilize so quickly?" The Plexian representative asked in a shaking voice. "Don't you need to discuss this with your government? Don't you need to debate and vote?" "Don't you need to debate and vote?" Yuna smiled sadly. "My people learned a long time ago that when someone is drowning, you don't form a committee to discuss rescue procedures. You jump in the water and pull them out. We have faced extinction dozens of times on our own world. We know what it means to fight for survival. And we know that survival means nothing if we only fight for ourselves. She walked toward the exit of the chamber. As she reached the door, she turned back one more time. The Chromath swarm has never faced a species from a death world before. They prey on the weak and the frightened. But humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We fought ice ages and supervolcanoes. We survived diseases that killed millions. We hunted animals 10 times our size, with nothing but stone tools and determination. The Chromath are about to learn what happens when they threaten something a Deathworlder has chosen to protect. The door closed behind her, leaving the Council in stunned silence. In orbit around Earth, massive warships were already powering up their engines. Thousands of Marines were boarding transport vessels. Medical teams were loading supplies. Engineers were running final checks on weapons systems. The entire operation moved with practiced efficiency that came from centuries of military tradition. In his command center, Admiral Day studied the tactical displays showing the Velian star systems. The Chromath swarm was vast, numbering in the millions of bioships. They had consumed dozens of worlds. No military force had ever stopped them. But Day was not afraid. He had fought in Earth's final world war. He had seen what humans could do when they fought for something bigger than themselves. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving messages from across Earth. Volunteers are flooding the recruitment centers. Everyone wants to help." Admiral Day nodded slowly. This was humanity at its best. When others ran from danger, humans ran toward it. When others gave up hope, humans fought harder. It was not because they were fearless. It was because they knew that some things were worth fighting for, even if it meant risking everything. "Tell the fleet to prepare for jump," Admiral Day ordered. "We leave for Velian space in 5 hours and 30 minutes. And send a message to all ships. Tell them that today, humanity shows the galaxy what it truly means to answer a distress call." The countdown began. Humanity's first full military operation beyond their home system was about to begin. The Chromath swarm had no idea what was coming for them. The jump through hyperspace took 3 days. When the human armada emerged in Velian space, Captain Hyun stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable and stared at the main screen. What he saw made his hands grip the railing until his knuckles turned white. Hespera Prime had been a beautiful world once. The Velians had shown him pictures during the journey. Cities that sparkled like jewels. Oceans that glowed with bioluminescent life. Mountains covered in purple forests. 11 billion people had called it home. Now the planet was dying. The atmosphere was choked with thick, black smoke. The oceans were boiling from orbital bombardment. The cities were nothing but burning craters. And surrounding the planet like a swarm of locusts were millions of Chromath bioships. "Report," Captain Hyun said in a steady voice, even though his heart was pounding. Commander Nari stepped forward. She was the chief xenobiologist for the Armada, and she had spent the entire journey studying everything the Velians knew about the Chromath. "Sir, scanning shows that the Chromath have already consumed most of the planet's biomass. They're preparing to move to the next inhabited world. That's Velian Station Tertius, which has a population of 3 million. How long do we have?" Captain Hyun asked. 12 hours, maybe less," Nari replied. Her voice was calm, but her eyes showed anger. "The Chromath bioships are living creatures, sir. They reproduce incredibly fast. They adapt to any weapon used against them, and they're controlled by a hive mind that coordinates them with perfect precision. Every species that has fought them has lost." Captain Hyun turned to look at her. "Every species, except us. We haven't fought them yet." Admiral Day's voice came through the communications system. "All ships, this is Admiral Day. I know what you're seeing right now. I know it looks impossible, but I want you to remember something. We come from Earth. We evolved, as hunters, on a world that had bigger, stronger, faster predators than us. We survived because we learned to think, to adapt, and to never give up." He paused for a moment. The Chromath have wiped out entire civilizations. They've killed trillions. But they've never faced humans before. They've never faced a species that climbed to the top of the food chain on a death world. Battle stations. Everyone. We're going hunting. The human warships moved into formation. 300 Chromath bioships detected them and changed course to intercept. The aliens expected the humans to retreat, like every other species. Instead, the human fleet accelerated toward them. Captain Hune felt his adrenaline spike as the distance closed. Weapons. What's our status? All railguns loaded and ready, sir, the weapons officer reported. Nuclear missiles armed. Plasma torpedoes at full charge. Fire at will, Captain Hune ordered. The Indomitable shuddered as its main railguns fired. Solid metal slugs, each weighing several tons, shot out at incredible speeds. They crossed the distance in seconds and punched straight through the first line of Chromath bioships. The alien vessels exploded in bursts of green ichor and organic debris. The Chromath adapted immediately. Their hulls thickened and hardened. The second volley of railgun fire did less damage. But the humans had expected this. Missile batteries opened up, sending hundreds of nuclear-tipped warheads into the swarm. White-hot explosions vaporized dozens of bioships at once. The Chromath adapted again, developing energy-absorbing membranes. So the humans switched to plasma torpedoes that melted through their defenses. When the Chromath evolved heat resistance, electromagnetic pulse weapons fried their nervous systems. Every time the aliens changed, the humans changed faster. They're trying to board us, Commander Nari warned, as several Chromath boarding pods shot toward the fleet. 3 pods, heading for the Retribution. On the cruiser Retribution, Lieutenant Sung received the warning with grim determination. He led a squad of 30 Marines in powered armor. Each suit made a human soldier strong enough to lift a car and tough enough to survive in space. The Marines took up defensive positions around the breach points. The Chromath pods hit the hull with wet, squelching sounds. Acidic enzymes ate through the metal. Then, the aliens came pouring through. They looked like giant insects made of black chitin and writhing tentacles. They were fast and deadly, designed to overwhelm prey with numbers. But they had never fought human Marines before. Lieutenant Sung opened fire with his assault cannon. The high-velocity rounds tore through the first wave of Chromath. His squad fired with practiced precision, creating overlapping fields of fire that nothing could survive. When the aliens got close, the Marines used their powered fists and combat blades. Enhanced human strength met alien ferocity in brutal combat. "They're stronger than the briefing suggested," one Marine shouted as he wrestled with a Chromath warrior. "Then hit them harder," Sung replied calmly, crushing an alien's skull with his armored fist. The Chromath had evolved to hunt weak prey. They had never encountered prey that fought back with such violence. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, Lieutenant Sung stood among the bodies of 60 Chromath invaders. His armor was covered in green blood, and his squad had taken some injuries, but they had held the line. The aliens had learned an important lesson. Humans were not prey. In space, the battle was ending. Of the 300 Chromath bioships, only 30 remained. They were trying to retreat. Admiral Day considered letting them go, then decided against it. The Chromath needed to understand what they were facing. "Pursue and destroy," he ordered. "Leave none alive to report back to the hive mind." The human warships chased down the survivors and eliminated them one by one. When the last Chromath ship exploded, the fleet regrouped near Velian Station Tertius. They had won humanity's first battle against the swarm. 0 human ships lost. 27 wounded Marines. No fatalities. But as Captain Hune looked at the scanning reports, he felt a chill run down his spine. "Commander Nari, these bioships we just fought. How many does the Chromath swarm have in total?" Nari checked her data and her face went pale. "Based on Velian intelligence, sir, there are approximately 4 million Chromath bioships in this region of space alone. What we just fought was a scouting force. Less than 1% of their total strength." The bridge fell silent. They had just won an incredible victory, but the real war hadn't even started yet. And somewhere in deep space, the Chromath hive mind was learning about the species that had dared to fight back. It would be coming with everything it had. Admiral Day's voice broke the silence. All ships, maintain alert status. This was just the opening move. The real battle is still ahead. But we've proven something today. The Chromath swarm can be beaten. Now we just need to do it 4 million more times. Despite the grim situation, Captain Hyun found himself smiling. That was such a human thing to say. Face impossible odds, and treat them like just another challenge to overcome. Maybe that's why humans had survived on Earth for so long. They were too stubborn to know when they were supposed to give up. News of humanity's victory spread through the Galactic Union like wildfire. Within hours, every species knew that someone had actually defeated the Chromath swarm in open combat. The reaction was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and desperate hope. Ambassador Yuna's office was flooded with communication requests from dozens of species that had ignored the Velians' plea for help. Now, they all wanted to talk to the humans. Yuna ignored most of them. She was too busy coordinating with Admiral Day and monitoring the situation in Velian space. The tactical displays showed a nightmare scenario unfolding. The main Chromath force was moving toward the agricultural world of Velian 7. 2 billion civilians lived there, and evacuation was impossible. There simply wasn't enough time or enough ships. General Tay stood in Yuna's office and studied the same displays. He was a broad-shouldered man with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too much combat. He commanded the 15,000 Marines that Admiral Day had deployed to protect the Velian worlds. "We can't evacuate them," General Tay said bluntly. "But we can defend them." "Against how many Chromath?" Yuna asked quietly. "Intelligence suggests 3 million bioforms will hit Velian 7, Tay replied. "That's 3 million ground troops plus air support and orbital bombardment. And you have 15,000 Marines," Yuna said. "That's 200 enemies for every one of your soldiers." General Tay smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Ma'am, I've read Earth's military history. At the Battle of Thermopylae, 300 Spartans held off an army of hundreds of thousands. At the Battle of Rorke's Drift, 150 British soldiers fought off 4,000 Zulu warriors. At the Chosin Reservoir, 30,000 Marines fought through 10 times their number in freezing temperatures. Humans have been winning impossible battles since we learned to stand upright. This is just another day at the office." Yuna wanted to argue, but she knew it would be pointless. General Tay had already made up his mind. "What do you need?" "Everything," Tay replied. "Heavy equipment, construction materials, explosives, and time. We have 6 days before the Chromath arrive. That's enough time to turn Velian 7 into a death trap." Over the next 6 days, the Velian population watched in confusion as human Marines transformed their peaceful world into a fortress. General Tay implemented what he called the Deathworld doctrine. While other species would evacuate and abandon the planet, humans would dig in and make the enemy pay for every meter of ground. Engineer Hana led teams that collapsed mine shafts and turned them into underground bunkers. They flooded valleys to create impassable terrain. They planted thousands of improvised explosive devices in forests and fields. They turned cities into mazes of kill zones and ambush points. Every building became a potential firing position. Every street became a trap. The Velians protested. They said the humans were destroying their beautiful world. Hana listened patiently, then explained in simple terms. "Your world has 2 possible futures. One future, the Chromath consume everything and everyone. Nothing survives. The other future, your world is damaged, but your people live. Which future do you prefer?" "Ever." The Velians stopped protesting after that. Some even volunteered to help with the construction. They quickly learned that working alongside humans was exhausting. The Marines never seemed to get tired. They worked through day and night without stopping. They lifted equipment that should have required machinery. They operated on stimulants and determination, driven by a simple goal that every human understood: protect the innocent. Sergeant Wu commanded one of the forward outposts. He was a young man, with quick reflexes and a tactical mind that saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. His squad was positioned at a narrow canyon that led to the main civilian shelters. If the Chromath wanted to reach the population centers, they would have to come through this choke point. Wu and his 12 Marines spent 5 days preparing their position. They planted explosives on the canyon walls. They set up automated turrets with overlapping fields of fire. They stockpiled ammunition and supplies for an extended siege. They even weaponized the local wildlife by luring a pack of predatory creatures into the canyon and training them to attack anything that smelled like Chromath. On the 6th day, the Chromath swarm arrived. 3 million bioforms descended from orbit like a plague of locusts. The sky turned black with their numbers. They landed in waves, each wave larger than the last. The Velians in the shelters prayed to their gods. They knew they were about to die, but the humans were ready. General Tay stood in his command center and watched the tactical displays with calm eyes. All units, this is General Tay. The Chromath have landed. Execute the Deathworld doctrine. Show them what happens when they invade a world defended by humans. The first Chromath wave advanced toward what they thought would be easy prey. Instead, they walked into carefully prepared kill zones. Hidden explosives detonated, sending thousands of aliens flying through the air. Automated turrets opened fire, their targeting systems never missing. Marine snipers picked off Chromath commanders from concealed positions. The Chromath adapted quickly, as they always did. They sent flyers to spot the human positions. So the humans shot down the flyers with anti-air weapons. The Chromath sent heavily armored shock troops to punch through the defenses. So the humans collapsed buildings on top of them. The Chromath tried to overwhelm positions with sheer numbers. So the humans retreated through prepared routes and ambushed the pursuers. At the canyon choke point, Sergeant Wu watched through his scope as a massive Chromath force approached. There were at least 50,000 of them, moving in a coordinated swarm. They thought they had found a weakness in the human defenses. Hold fire, Wu ordered his squad. Let them get into the canyon. Let them think they've got us. The Chromath poured into the narrow space between the canyon walls. More and more of them crowded in, eager to reach the prey on the other side. When the canyon was completely full, Wu gave the order. Now! Explosives detonated along both walls of the canyon. Millions of tons of rock came crashing down. The Chromath tried to escape, but there was nowhere to go. In less than 30 seconds, 50,000 aliens were buried under the rubble. The few survivors that made it through found themselves facing 12 human Marines in powered armor. The battle was short and brutal. The Chromath had evolved to be perfect predators, but humans had evolved to be perfect hunters. There was a difference. Predators attacked the weak, hunters challenged the strong, and right now, the Chromath were learning that they had challenged the wrong species. The fighting continued for 8 days straight. The Marines didn't sleep. They took stimulants to stay awake and rotated through combat positions to maintain effectiveness. When ammunition ran low, they used whatever weapons they could find. Mining explosives became improvised bombs. Industrial equipment became improvised weapons. Even the planet's volcanic activity was weaponized when engineer Hana figured out how to trigger controlled eruptions that engulfed Chromath formations. The aliens adapted and evolved with each wave, but the humans were always one step ahead. They used tactics that no other species had ever considered. They fought in environments that other species couldn't survive. They held positions that should have been overrun within hours. On the 8th day, something unprecedented happened. The Chromath swarm withdrew. For the first time in their entire recorded history, they retreated from a food source. The hive mind had calculated that conquering Velian 7 would cost more resources than the planet was worth. The humans had made it too expensive. General Tay stood among the ruins of what had once been a peaceful farming community. His armor was scorched and dented. His face was covered in dirt and alien blood. Around him, his exhausted Marines were tending to their wounded and preparing for the next attack. But there would be no next attack. Not here. Not today. A young Velian approached him carefully. She had been helping in one of the medical shelters throughout the battle. "General Tay," she said in broken English. "Thank you. You saved us. You saved all of us." Tay looked at her with tired eyes. "Ma'am, we didn't save you because you're Velian. We didn't save you because of politics or alliances. We saved you because someone sent a distress call, and we answered. That's what humans do. When someone is in trouble, we help. It's that simple." The young Velian started crying. Within moments, more Velians emerged from the shelters. They had spent 8 days in terror, listening to the battle rage above them. They had expected to die. Now they were alive because a species of Deathworlders had decided their lives were worth fighting for. The scene was broadcast across the Galactic Union. Billions of beings watched as the Velian population raised their own flag alongside Earth's banner in the middle of the scarred battlefield. They watched as exhausted human Marines, some barely able to stand, helped the civilians begin the work of rebuilding. They watched as General Tay knelt down to comfort a Velian child who had lost her parents in the attack. The message was clear. Deathworlders didn't just know how to fight, they knew what to fight for. And that made all the difference. The victory at Velian 7 changed everything. For the first time, the Chromath swarm faced an enemy that wouldn't run. But the hive mind was ancient and patient. It had consumed countless civilizations over millions of years. One defeat meant nothing. It would study these humans, adapt to their tactics, and overwhelm them with numbers. The response came 3 weeks later. Intelligence reports flooded into Admiral Day's command center aboard the Indomitable. Specialist Mina, the Armada's AI warfare expert, stood at the main tactical display with a grim expression on her face. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and fingers that flew across her keyboard with incredible speed. "Admiral," Mina said quietly, "we have a problem. A big problem." Admiral Day stepped up beside her. "Show me." Mina brought up a star chart that made Day's blood run cold. Red markers indicated Chromath forces. There were thousands of them, all converging on a single point in space. "The main swarm is moving, sir. Over 4 million bioships. They're not heading for the Velian worlds anymore. They're heading for Earth. CC properly. This properly." The command center fell silent. Every officer stared at the display in horror. The Chromath hive mind had designated humanity as a threat. Not just any threat, but a priority alpha threat. It was redirecting 80% of its total military strength toward one goal. "How long do we have?" Admiral Day asked. "If they maintain current speed, they'll reach the outer colonies of human space in 6 weeks, Mina replied. "Earth itself in 8 weeks. Sir, if this force reaches Earth, it won't matter how well we fight. The sheer numbers will overwhelm our defenses. They'll consume our homeworld and everything on it." Captain Hyun looked at the tactical data and felt fear grip his chest for the first time since joining the military. "We need to stop them before they reach human space." "But how? We have 73 ships. They have 4 million. Admiral Day studied the star chart in silence. His years of military experience had taught him to stay calm in crisis situations. But this wasn't a crisis. This was potential extinction. If the swarm reached Earth, billions would die. Human civilization would be erased from the galaxy. "We can't let them reach Earth," Day said finally. "We have to stop them here, in Velian space. We make our stand at Velian Prime. It's the only heavily fortified system in the region." "Sir," Commander Nari spoke up carefully, "even if we evacuate all personnel from the outer colonies and concentrate every available ship at Velian Prime, we'll have less than 100 warships against 4 million. Those are impossible odds. Admiral Day turned to look at her. Commander, do you know why humans survived on Earth? Nari shook her head slowly. Because we learned to hunt in packs, Day explained. A single human couldn't kill a mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger. But a group of humans working together with tactics and tools could bring down anything. The Chromath fight with overwhelming numbers and hive mind coordination. They expect their enemies to follow predictable military doctrines. We're going to teach them that humans don't fight fair. Over the next 2 weeks, the human armada prepared for the battle that would decide everything. Captain Jin, of the carrier Valkyrie, proposed a strategy that made even experienced officers nervous. Instead of fighting in traditional fleet formations, the human ships would operate as independent wolf packs. They would use asteroid fields and stellar phenomena as cover. They would strike from unexpected angles. They would break every rule in the Galactic Union's military handbook. The Chromath hive mind is their greatest strength and their greatest weakness, Captain Jin explained during the strategy meeting. They coordinate perfectly, but that means they think in predictable patterns. We need to be unpredictable, chaotic, random. Make them react instead of act. Pilot Rin commanded one of the strike fighter squadrons on the Valkyrie. She was young and aggressive, with reflexes that bordered on superhuman. She listened to Captain Jin's plan and grinned. So basically, you want us to be annoying. Sting them from every direction until they lose cohesion. Exactly, Jin replied. Bees don't try to fight bears head-on. They swarm and sting until the bear runs away. We're the bees. The Chromath are the bear. Specialist Mina worked day and night on a separate project. She had been studying the Chromath communication patterns since the first battle. The hive mind coordinated through some kind of quantum entanglement signal. If she could disrupt that signal, even for a few seconds, it might give the human fleet the opening they needed. It's possible, Mina explained to Admiral Day. But I need to get close enough to one of their command ships to inject the virus. Really close. Like, suicide mission. Close. Can it be done remotely? Day asked. Mina shook her head. No, sir. The Chromath bioships have organic firewalls that adapt too quickly. Someone needs to physically plug into their systems. Then we'll get you close, Day promised. Whatever it takes. The Chromath swarm arrived at Velian Prime exactly on schedule. The human fleet watched as millions of bioships emerged from hyperspace and blotted out the stars. The aliens moved in perfect formation, like a single organism with 4 million parts. They had conquered hundreds of worlds using this strategy. Overwhelming force, perfect coordination, relentless advance, but they had never faced humans before. Admiral Day stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and felt a strange calm settle over him. This was it. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Win, and they would prove that Deathworlders could stand against any threat, lose, and Earth would burn. All ships, this is Admiral Day. I won't give you an inspiring speech about honor or glory. You know what's at stake. The Chromath swarm wants to destroy Earth because we dared to protect the innocent. They want to kill our families because we refused to stand by, while others suffered. Well, I've got news for them. Humanity has been fighting extinction events since we learned to walk upright. We're still here, and we're about to show them why. He paused and looked at his crew. Break formation. Execute Wolfpack protocols. And remember, we don't need to destroy them all. We just need to make them wish they had never heard of Earth. The human fleet scattered. Dozens of ships broke away in different directions, moving in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully coordinated chaos. The Chromath hive mind tried to analyze the human strategy and found no pattern. They were used to enemies that followed military doctrine. The humans were fighting like predators, not soldiers. Pilot Rin led her squadron in a suicidal charge straight through the center of the Chromath formation. Thousands of bioships fired at them. Rin dodged and weaved through the incoming fire with reflexes honed by years of training. Behind her, millions of Chromath ships turned to pursue. That's right, Rin said to herself as she pushed her fighter to maximum speed. Follow me. Don't pay attention to what's happening behind you. 8. What was happening behind them was devastation. While the Chromath focused on Rin's squadron, human destroyers emerged from the shadow of Velian Prime's moon. Their weapons fired at point-blank range into the exposed rear of the swarm. Thousands of bioships exploded before the hive mind could react. The battle raged for 43 hours. Human crews fought with stimulants and sheer willpower. When automated systems failed, they operated weapons manually. When ships took critical damage, they stayed in the fight anyway. Captain Jin led the Valkyrie into the heart of the swarm. His mission was to get Specialist Mina close enough to inject her virus. Every second felt like an hour. Every hit felt like the ship would tear apart. Get me 10 seconds closer, Mina said. That's all I need, Jin nodded. The Valkyrie surged forward. At the last second, Jin ordered Mina's boarding pod launched. It buried itself in the Chromath command ship. Mina deployed her virus successfully. The hive mind fractured, and Captain Jin sacrificed himself by ramming his carrier into the largest Chromath cluster. In that 30-second window of chaos, Admiral Day gave the order. Fire everything. Nuclear fire consumed millions of bioships. The Chromath swarm broke and retreated for the first time in their history. The victory came at a terrible cost. 19 human ships destroyed. 7,000 personnel dead. But Earth was safe. Admiral Day watched the retreating swarm and knew this was just the beginning. The war wasn't over. It was just starting. 3 months passed since the Battle of Velian Prime. The galaxy was transformed. News of humanity's victory spread to every corner of known space. The Chromath swarm, the unstoppable force that had terrified civilizations for centuries, had been defeated. Not just beaten in a small skirmish, but actually driven away from a major offensive. It changed everything. Admiral Day stood at the memorial on Earth, watching as the names of the 7,000 fallen were added to humanity's wall of heroes. Each name was engraved in stone. Each name represented someone who had chosen to fight for strangers on the other side of the galaxy. The ceremony was broadcast across all human colonies and throughout the Galactic Union. For the first time, alien species witnessed a human tradition that shocked them to their core. Humans honored their dead. They didn't just move on and forget. They remembered. They grieved. They acknowledged the sacrifice. Families stood before the wall and touched the names of loved ones they would never see again. Warriors stood at attention, with tears running down their faces. Children placed flowers at the base of the memorial. Ambassador Yuna stood next to Day and watched the aliens in the crowd. She could see the confusion on their faces. Most species in the galaxy treated death as an unfortunate necessity. They didn't dwell on it. But humans were different. Humans understood that every life mattered, even in death. They don't understand why we do this, Yuna said quietly. No. Day agreed. But maybe that's why we win battles that others wouldn't even fight. We know exactly what we're risking. We know the cost. And we choose to pay it anyway. The ceremony ended. But the impact would last much longer. Across the galaxy, billions of beings had watched humans grieve for their fallen. They realized something profound. Humans didn't fight fearlessly. They fought despite their fear because they believed some things were worth dying for. Earth's government convened an emergency session to address a question that would define humanity's future. Should they continue intervening in galactic conflicts? The debate was intense and emotional. General Tay argued for isolation. We've proven our point, he said firmly. We've shown the galaxy that Earth can defend itself. Now we should focus on building up our defenses and staying out of other people's wars. Let the Galactic Union solve their own problems. Ambassador Yuna stood up to respond. General Tay, I understand your position, but isolation is no longer possible. The Chromath know where Earth is. They know we're a threat. The only way to protect our homeworld is to make sure the swarm never gets strong enough to threaten it again. That means taking the fight to them, not waiting for them to come to us. The debate continued for hours. Representatives from every human colony had opinions. Some wanted to become the galaxy's protectors. Others wanted to withdraw completely. But everyone agreed on one thing. The choice they made today would shape humanity's role in the galaxy for generations to come. Commander Nari presented her findings to the Assembly. After months of studying captured chromath specimens, she had reached a conclusion. The chromath swarm can be defeated permanently, she explained, but only through coordinated strikes on their breeding worlds deep in uncharted space. We've identified 7 primary hive worlds where the swarm reproduces and regenerates. If we destroy those worlds, the chromath will lose their ability to recover from losses. She paused and looked around the chamber. But it won't be easy. Those hive worlds are in the most dangerous region of space. The journey alone will take years. The battles will be brutal, and the casualties will be significant. We would need a coalition fleet of at least 500 ships and 50,000 ground troops. Even then, success isn't guaranteed. The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what Nari was really saying. Defeating the chromath permanently would require years of warfare and thousands more casualties. Captain Wu, promoted after his actions on Velian 7, stood to speak as a representative of the enlisted personnel. His voice was calm but carried weight. I'm not a politician. I'm a soldier. So I'll make this simple. We didn't ask to be born on a death world. We didn't ask to be stronger, tougher, or more aggressive than other species. But we are. And right now, the galaxy needs Deathworlders. He looked directly at General Tay. Sir, you taught me that soldiers fight for the person next to them. But you also taught me that sometimes we fight for people we've never met. Because that's what makes us human. That's what makes us better than the monsters we fight against. The Assembly took a vote. It wasn't unanimous, but the majority was clear. Humanity would lead a coalition campaign against the chromath breeding worlds. They would take the fight to the enemy and end the threat once and for all. Ambassador Yuna issued a formal declaration to the Galactic Union. Earth was calling for volunteers from all species to join a coalition armada. The goal was to eliminate the chromath swarm permanently. Any species that wanted to participate would be welcome, but the humans would lead the operation. The response was overwhelming. 42 species immediately pledged ships and personnel. Even species that had refused to help the Velians now wanted to join the fight. The Therians pledged their fastest cruisers. The Plexians sent engineers and medical personnel. The Velians themselves joined with every ship they could spare. Over the next year, the largest military fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of known space. The combined coalition armada consisted of ships from 42 different species, but at its core were the human warships. The repaired and upgraded Indomitable served as the flagship, with Admiral Day in command. The preparation was intense. Human military instructors trained alien crews in Deathworlder combat tactics. Engineers from a dozen species worked together to develop new weapons. Medical teams prepared for casualties on a scale never before seen. Everyone knew this would be the battle that decided the future of the galaxy. Pilot Rin, now squadron commander, stood in her fighter bay and looked at her mixed crew. Half were human. The other half came from 4 different species. They had trained together for 6 months and had become a tight unit. Listen up, Rin said to her pilots. In a few hours, we jump into the unknown. We're going hunting for the chromath breeding worlds. A lot of us aren't coming back, but I want you to remember why we're doing this. She pointed to a picture on the wall. It showed a Velian child that had been rescued from Velian 7. That little girl is alive because humans decided her life was worth fighting for. Billions of beings across the galaxy are alive because Deathworlders answered a distress call. When we're out there facing impossible odds, remember that. We're not fighting for glory. We're fighting so that no one else has to send a distress call that goes unanswered. The pilots nodded. They came from different worlds, but right now they shared a common purpose. Stop the Chromath. Protect the innocent. Show the galaxy that good beings working together could overcome any evil. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Day reviewed the final tactical plans. The young Velian, who had first sent the distress call, stood beside him as a coalition liaison officer. Her name was Kira, and she had spent the last year learning from the humans. She wanted to fight. She wanted to make sure no one else suffered the way her people had suffered. "Admiral," Kira said quietly, "can I ask you something? Why do humans do this?" Admiral Day thought about the question for a long moment. Because a long time ago, humans almost destroyed themselves. We fought wars that killed millions. We came very close to extinction several times, and it was always because we chose fear over hope. We learned from those mistakes. We learned that the only way to survive is to work together, to protect each other, to answer when someone calls for help. He turned to look at Kira. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, we lose people. But the alternative is to become the kind of species that hears children crying for help and does nothing. That's not the kind of species we want to be. The fleet was ready. Every ship reported green status. Every crew member was at their station. The moment had arrived. Admiral Day opened a channel to the entire armada. Over 500 ships from 42 different species heard his words. This is Admiral Day to all coalition forces. Today we embark on the most important military operation in galactic history. We're going to end the Chromath threat forever. Not for glory, not for territory, but because it's the right thing to do. Pilot Rin's voice cut in on the command channel. "Admiral, this is Gold Squadron. Permission to transmit to all ships?" "Granted," Day replied. Rin took a deep breath. "We came from a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages, volcanoes, plagues, and predators. We fought each other for thousands of years and nearly destroyed ourselves. But we're still here. We're still fighting. Because humans learned that life only has meaning when you use it to protect others. When you stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves." Her voice grew stronger. "The Chromath swarm has consumed trillions of beings. They think they're unstoppable. Well, they've never faced humans who decided you were worth protecting. This is Gold Squadron to all coalition forces. We're Deathworlders, and we're coming for them. Let's go hunting." The fleet jumped into hyperspace as one. 500 ships, carrying the hopes of 1,000 worlds. They were heading into the unknown, into danger beyond imagination. Many would not return. But every being on every ship knew they were part of something greater than themselves. The legend of humanity's Deathworlder Armada had only just begun. Across the galaxy, people waited and prayed. Children looked up at the stars and dreamed of heroes. Parents hugged their children tighter, grateful that someone was out there fighting the darkness. And in the depths of space, the real war was about to begin.